Yo, what's up? 1.5 years ago, the Japanese faction was added to Enlisted. For the longest time, it was the by far weakest faction in the whole game. Reasons for that were very bad SMGs, underwhelming rifles, horrible tanks, and surprisingly very disappointing planes. So basically everything that could go wrong went wrong with the Japanese. Except for some very few exceptions like the anti-tank rifle or the scoped machine gun, the Japanese didn't have anything going for them. All of this changed with the recent big update because the new BR5 items for the Japanese catapulted them from the very bottom to the very top of the food chain of enlisted nations. So it comes as no surprise that I released this high BR Japanese guide as the last among all the nations, because the Japanese desperately needed all of the new toys. Now let's take a look at them. Once you enter the world of high BR Japanese, all of the downsides that we just summed up disappear, and instead you get some of the most overpowered and fun toys in the whole game, starting out with the Type A automatic rifle. This isn't only the best weapon for the Japanese faction, it's also 99% the best weapon in the whole game. And this is due to this rifle being an absolutely complete package of ridiculously good stats. Unlike its little brother, the Type A semi-auto rifle, this one comes with a 30 round magazine size, full auto or semi-auto if you want fire mode, and some very perfect fire rate for a full auto weapon. Combine this with a buff 10 damage on short and mid distance and you get a perfect weapon. Now, on high BR, most of the time you will encounter enemies who have vitality. So it's crucial to not only deal 10 damage, but also 13.5 damage. And on short distance, this weapon kills every soldier with one shot. And on mid distance, you kill every enemy with 2 shots. This is absolutely crucial. There are very few weapons in the game who are full auto with enough magazine size who can easily spray away a whole group of vitality up soldiers. And this weapon gives you exactly that. But it gets even better because this is literally counted as a semi-auto rifle, meaning unlike assault rifles that are limited to, well, assaulters, you can give this weapon to every soldier you want as like a standard rifle. You can give it to engineers, you can give it to a rifleman, you can give it to your flamethrowers, to your anti-tank gunners. Every single soldier class just instantly becomes a high-tiered assaulter. You can even use a normal rifleman squad with 9 of them if you want. It's insane. It's so good that it's not even reasonable to play assaulters as the Japanese, because a 9-man rifleman squad with these is just straight up better. So this is the main reason why the Japanese are so overpowered right now, and this weapon is so strong, especially with the trick that just using rifleman squads as superior, ridiculously overpowered assaulter squads, that this alone makes Japanese one of the best nations in the game. But it doesn't stop here, because the hype train, powered by the Emperor, goes even harder. Because our great genius Emperor in his generosity blessed us with this ridiculous weapon. This Type 100 machine gun is literally 2 machine guns tied together with duct tape, like American engineer work, and instead of shooting 1 bullet, you shoot 2 bullets at the same time. Now this here is the only machine gun in the game that deals bolt action damage, because you literally just add together both bullets. Now, most of the time you will hit the same target with both bullets and there's no chance of survival whatsoever. You can snipe someone across the whole map with 400 meter distance, still enough damage to easily die. Where this weapon really shines is if you start just spraying into groups of enemies on longer distances like mid distance, and then you get bullet dispersion. And unlike normal machine guns where bullet dispersion usually is harmful because you're missing your targets, Here you have 2 bullets, and bullet dispersion just means that you're likely hitting all the other targets nearby. So this weapon doesn't even have the normal downside of having dispersion. And the recoil is also quite fine, and combine this with a nice fire rate of not being too fast, and a 50 bullet magazine size. Keep in mind it's 100 bullets actually, 50 for each barrel. And since you're shooting them together, it's the same time as just shooting 50 bullets overall. Or shooting 50 times. So yeah, this weapon is very easy to use. The slow fire rate, relatively slow fire rate, means that the recoil you don't really feel the recoil. And if you mount it while being on the ground, it becomes 0 recoil. Dispersion's still there obviously, but once again the dispersion works on your side. And the sights of this weapon are also quite good. So overall a really strong and really fun weapon. Now if you want to be very fancy, what you can do is you can combine this weapon with the scope type 97. And then you just run around with your machine gunners with a primary scoped machine gun, so you can easily spray enemies far away. And if enemies get, also just use it like a binocular to scout, or just shoot enemies into hiding in dark windows and stuff like that. And when you see a group of enemies, you switch to your type 100 machine gun and just spray the whole group away. So this is the fun setup. This gives you also some nice role-playing ways. If you want to just have the most dumbed down, most powerful way to play the machine guns, obviously you just add up with 2 type 100 machine guns. The only minuscule downside the Japanese machine gunners have is that their heavy machine gun nest, buildable by their engineers, is the weakest overall in the game. Though you don't really need to build it, obviously, since the firepower provided by your weapons is already ridiculously insane. And, well, if you happen to have the time and opportunity to build a heavy machine gun nest, you still have a really good weapon in your hand. And you still can shoot down many things. So that's not really a downside, it's just a nice addition. So far we encountered the strongest rifle in the game and one of the absolutely strongest machine guns in the game. Now what about the SMGs? Well, in the long line of 8 SMGs that the Japanese get, for the longest time, since the inception of this faction, the SMGs were very disappointing. And they were even so bad that they required multiple buffs. For example, this weapon received 3 buffs within 6 months. And it's still bad. Now you can imagine how horribly bad it was back then. And this was the latest unlock for a long time. Then came the SIG 1920, which was so good that I made a video about it. Also recommend to watch it, very fun. This weapon, really nice, also 50 bullet SMGs with a moderate fire rate, and a bayonet in general, really fun to use since you can shoot them for a long time and aim quite well with them. Then we received the very dangerous Type 100 SMG, which has a really good fire rate and quite low recoil. This is the first weapon that becomes just, with very good aim, capable of spraying away a whole squad. Then recently we received the Type 2 SMG, which is basically, well, it's like another version of the SIG 1920. It has basically no recoil at all, literally 10-10, yeah, but reduced damage if you like to aim well while full spraying. This is the perfect weapon for you. There are very few weapons in the game where you can literally just full auto spray headshots into a whole enemy group. So this is a very nice role-playing weapon. But there's one true king of the Japanese SMGs, and it's the Tokyo Arsenal. Now, once this thing came out, people complained that it only existed in an experimental way, and the experimental parameters of the weapon were different than what we have in the game. Some sources stated it only could have a fire rate of 900. Other sources stated it could reach 1200. Now, the reason why it has 1200 in the game are 2. First of all, the game wanted to give the Japanese some really strong SMG that's also very fun to use and has some cool gimmick. And the gimmick of this weapon is obviously it shoots very fast. But it also prevents it from being too strong, because if this weapon had a fire rate of 1000, it would be much better. Much better. Because this fire rate is just literally too harmful for your own good. The recoil adds up. Yeah? The horizontal recoil is basically non-existent, which is great. The vertical recoil is also quite low, especially with recoil reduction, especially on Assaulter Force, which can have the maximum amount of recoil reduction from their perks and from their very high number of yellow points. But due to the high fire rate, the added recoil becomes basically uncontrollable. So this weapon, in fear of being too strong, got nerfed by its too high fire rate. Because when you start spraying, not only are you gonna use up your magazine way too quickly, but most of your bullets are gonna miss. So yeah, spraying with this is really good on close range if you happen to fight within a building, but anything outside becomes bad. But there's one way to use this weapon to its fullest power and basically have no downsides at all. And here's a trick that I recommend. If you're using your Assaulters, obviously it's recommendable to get them into Assaulter 4 tier, because then you get the maximum amount of points. And not only can you choose from very good perks, but you can also use the passive abilities from the perks. As you can see, this yellow perk reduces recoil automatically, and every point reduces recoil by 0.5%. So 20 yellow points give you a vertical recoil reduction of 10%, which is great, which is absolutely great, because you get 10% reduction and then you get 40% reduction. So overall you get minus 50, so you cut the recoil in half and you get an effective recoil of 12.5. Yeah, this is already much more comfy, much better, much more controllable. Though once again, this ridiculous fire rate, once it's upgraded almost 1400 per minute, it's just insane. So you want all the control help you can get. And here's how you do it. Since this weapon becomes very, very bad at even mid distance, due to the lack of accuracy, you want some other weapon. And what you can do is you dual wield Type 100 SMGs with the Tokyo Arsenal. And this Type 100 SMG, due to the still very high fire rate but significantly less high fire rate, is much better on mid distance. Also the damage is higher. Against, well, again it depends on, well, the damage is quite similar, but still, if someone is damaged, if someone is injured or something happened, the little difference of damage adds up. Also, even if you deal enough damage to kill someone, there's still a chance for the target to get downed. So even if you reach the threshold of 10 damage, for example here, 3 hits on mid distance are gonna create 12.6 damage. 3 hits with the Tokyo Arsenal are gonna create 11.7 damage. So the difference increases the chance for the target to actually die instead of getting downed. So the additional damage is still worth a bit, especially if the person uses the yellow additional survivability perk that you can see here. This perk, well, can be really good, though additional damage negates it partially. So yeah, so this is my recommendation for Japanese Assaulters. Use this to greet your enemies on mid-range and just make sure that you actually land your hits on the target. And once you're closer to the enemies, or once you want to surprise and sneak up on enemies, or you're defending a house, or if you're sitting in front of or like inside a window and mount your SMG, since you can do it, just start spraying with this and you're gonna have a much better time, because if you ensure your bullets land on the targets, well, the targets can't survive. Like, they're gonna swallow so many bullets, it's just impossible. So yeah, this is the dual wield combo I recommend for the Japanese Assaulters. Really, really good. And the best thing is, you can even use it on your APC drivers if you want. And you can use you can also use it on your pilots if you want. Yeah, so you can use it everywhere you want where SMGs are allowed. Now what about the fancy weapon types? First of all, flamethrowers. As with every nation, you get access to the tier 2 flamethrower. The difference between tier 2 and tier 1 flamethrower is the distance or the reach that you can shoot. Tier 1 flamethrower only has 18 meter jet length. Tier 2 has 32 meters. And this is absolutely insane, because everything you touch will die. Everything you don't touch won't take any damage. Unlike with SMGs where you, well, if someone's far away, you still deal a little bit of damage. Flamethrowers are all or nothing weapons. Either the enemy is dead or nothing happens and you are dead. So you absolutely want to have the additional jet length. And yep, as usual, flamethrower is extremely strong and also very fun to use, because these Flametrooper 2 dudes come with the best natural perk in the game, the plus 12.3% vitality. Of course, you combine it with the plus 35 vitality, so you basically have soldiers which have 1.5 times as much life points as normal soldiers. For these dudes, the normal damage math doesn't work, because they can survive bullet combinations of basically all weapons that normal soldiers don't. Meaning they will survive usually for 1 more hit. Depending on the weapon, even 2 more hits. This gives you enough time to spray more fuel on the enemies and make sure that for the maybe half of a second that you survive longer, you're gonna kill 1 squad more that's in front of you. So yeah, Flametrooper 2's absolutely overpowered super males. Yeah, super chiseled males. Look how smug he looks. Exactly, because he knows he's gonna survive more bullets than anyone else. So yeah, flamethrowers very much worth it. And regarding anti-tank weapons, here's the fancy thing. You might have noticed how deep back we can reach regarding machine guns. We can literally combine a tier 2 machine gun. It's literally a BR2 machine gun. Also best low BR machine gun. And definitely most fun one. With a BR5 machine gun. We can do the same thing with the anti-tank weapons. And we can literally, you can even humiliate your American enemies by destroying them with a battle rating 1 weapon. Yes, because here's how you do it. Surprisingly, out of all nations, the Japanese have the smallest selection of anti-tank weapons. They have exactly 3. Though all of these 3 are really viable and have a distinct playstyle. First of all, the Type 97 anti-tank rifle. This thing is the best anti-tank rifle in the game because it has, well, otherworldly stats. It has a 7-round semi-auto magazine size, meaning you can shoot your bullets quickly. This thing is basically as fast as the fastest bolt action you can get in the game, which is great, which is absolutely great. And every shot is going to deal humongous triple-digit damage across the whole battlefield, so everything dies. You can use this as a semi-auto rifle, obviously, if you want. You can use this, most importantly, to snipe enemy structures like anti-tank guns, anti-air guns, machine gun nests, and other things. If enemies decide to turtle up with rows of sandbags, congratulations, just shoot at them. You're gonna pierce multiple sandbags and the soldiers hiding behind them, thinking they're safe. You can easily shoot through most buildings, through most obstacles on maps. For example, all of these objectives where they are burning built down house ruins and there are lots of Americans hiding inside of them, looking smugly at you and trying to snipe you. Just shoot into these ruins and you're gonna get kills because you're gonna pierce through everything. So this thing is insane. Also, you can kill the tracks of every single tank with this thing. So no matter if it's a Pershing or if it's a Jumbo or if it's a Sherman or whatever, easily killed. And the biggest reason possibly to use this is the implementation of APCs in Enlisted, because this thing not only has really good penetration, it also has ridiculous damage, as already noticed. This means if you hit an APC, it's gonna explode. The biggest problems you encounter when fighting APCs is that since they usually don't have anything that can explode, and nope, unlike Hollywood implies, if you shoot a fuel tank, it doesn't explode. It most of the time won't even catch fire. In order to ignite a fuel tank to start burning slowly, you need usually incendiary ammunition. So you can even spray with a machine gun into a fuel tank, nothing will happen. It just will get hose and start leaking. So there's nothing that can actually destroy APCs, which makes them so strong. You can shoot Panzerfausts multiple times at an APC. It will get red and orange and black, but it will still survive. Meaning it still is capable of spawning soldiers. It won't drive, but it doesn't need to. It can still act as a rally point. So APCs have some insanely high survivability against most weapon types. Not against this thing though, because you literally deal 200 damage to the APC, and 200 damage means things explode. Yeah, things absolutely explode. If you want to have fun, shoot a bunch of Americans with this thing, and they're gonna literally explode while flying to 100 meters back to the side of the map. So yeah, this is absolutely insane. it has so many applications across multiple situations that it's basically an auto-include. Now, this thing won't penetrate the big tanks, obviously. You can snipe their barrel, though, so you're never helpless, yeah? Whenever you see a tank, if it's too strong to destroy straight up, you can, if you want to really be hardcore, you can just learn all of the weak spots of the American tanks, and then you will be able to find even weak spots in Pershings. Though the easiest way, just snipe the turret, so he can't shoot you back, or snipe the tracks, or both, preferably. And if he starts spinning, most of the time you can actually snipe into the side of a tank. Even jumbos are quite easily killed if you shoot into their weak spots on the sides. So yeah, this thing, very, very good. Very, very, very fun to use. If you want to, yeah, like the most fun way to play Japanese possibly is to have a anti-tank gunner squad with 3 of those, and you can just snipe across the whole battlefield. Though, if you want to penetrate the big boys, you will need the big boys. And my recommendation is have a mix of anti-tank weapons in your army, some anti-tank rifles, and some rocket launchers. Now, the Japanese have this literal pipe in their arsenal, and this type is literally a pipe, and it doesn't have any assist help. So you literally just aim into the center of your screen. It takes a while to learn, but once you learned it, it has the best penetration of all the Japanese weapons. Keep in mind, compared to a Panzerfaust or even Bazooka 2, it has some very low penetration of only 10 centimeters and some, well, mediocre explosive power, but still better than nothing. So yeah, the question is, are you gonna use this rocket launcher or the second one? The second one actually is like a bazooka. I wouldn't be surprised if it was based off of captured bazookas, similar to the Ofenrohr that Germany just built after capturing a bazooka and improving it and having their own bazooka, though with the tendency of burning your face if you use it in the first iterations. Now, this thing, much easier to aim because you actually have some aim sights here, and also much, well, it flies straighter. Has a little bit more damage, well, 11% more damage, though 20% penalty on penetration. And since killing tanks is all about penetration, the trade-off is quite extreme. So yeah, my recommendation is just use a bunch of these, or at least one of these, and use one of these. And you can also use one of these for fun, though this is more reliable. So yeah, like the Japanese, one of the few armies that actually can take use of all the anti-tank weapons they have. Now let's examine the vehicle situation with the Japanese nation. And you might already have the supposition that there's something wrong with them. And yes, there are lots of things that are wrong with them. 2 reasons for that. First of all, historical reasons. The emperor, in his wisdom, decided that the Japanese army needs to focus on its navy, its air force, and, well, the infantry, the land-based, the land-focused forces weren't really that important. Meaning, well, they still were valued, but they didn't get the best equipment. Especially when it comes to the tank forces. They were completely neglected. And you see that by the fact that among the tanks from the Japanese, you can pick from, do you want a proper gun? Do you want acceptable armor? Not good armor, just acceptable armor. Do you want this armor to be open-topped or not? Do you want to have a machine gun? And if yes, then prepare for the worst machine gun of all in the game for tanks. It's a 20-bullet machine gun. Do you want to be able to use the machine gun and the cannon at the same time? Yeah, and other things. So the tanks are horrible. There's not a single tank that's actually good except for the low BR Hoi, which is the, out of all low BRs, the only one that actually works like a proper tank. And then if you go later, you get the Shinu, which was for the longest time the best Japanese tank. And now, finally, the only exception to the Japanese rule, the Hori production tank. You might wonder, why is a tank called production? Well, it existed only experimentally, meaning that the blueprints were there, some calculations were made that it could work out. A wooden prototype was built, and half of the tank was built in metal. Though half of the tank being built in metal means, well, doesn't mean that the other half will fit together and actually harmonize. But, though, this tank existed in the game isn't really much of a problem because it's literally absolutely crucial. Because the Japanese don't even have... Like, the best Japanese tank is roughly equal to the American Sherman. Yes. A BR-3 tank can easily slap the Japanese high BR tanks unless they get this thing. And since the Pershing was introduced, the Japanese don't have anything at all. And keep in mind, the Jumbo alone is enough to slap everything the Japanese have. So, yeah, the Horror production is the only saving grace you get as a Japanese player. Now, let's take a look at this beauty, because, yes, the Emperor completely outdid himself on this. First of all, it has some really cool turquoise coloring. Secondly, it comes with the most insane cannon you can imagine. 105 millimeters. Ultra long cannon. Meaning, not only is your high explosive capability ridiculous, you shoot in a direction and everything 10-20 meters left and right dies as well. And you get the high penetration effect of the long barrel. Meaning you can easily one-shot not only Pershings, but even King Tigers if you want, in custom games. So, absolutely insane, absolutely insane. But, wait, there's more, because the Emperor thought ahead and said, well, anything beyond 90 millimeters usually requires 2 tankers to reload. So the reload speed would be very low. But not with this thing, because you have, in the turret, you have two loaders. So, well, the loading time, you have 2 loaders perfectly placed so they can load together. So instead of loading twice as long because the shells are just ridiculously large and heavy, or because it, for example, would be a 2-parted ammunition, meaning you have the propellant and then you have the actual shell. No, they can just load together. So the whole process isn't even slower than normal loading, which is insanely good. And even if you lose a bunch of them, you can still, well, if you lose 2 of them, you can still work normally. You can still drive and shoot and load quite properly, fast, with only 4 crew members. So yeah, this tank is just insane. And by the way, you won't even get shot that often because look at that ridiculous armor. Look at the ridiculous 200 millimeter armor. This is completely insane. The easiest way to deal with this thing, or the only way, is to, well, obviously from the air or from the sides with explosions. But if you're in a tank duel, the only way to deal with you is shooting the barrel, or if you can, shooting through these side plates, because this is exactly where the loaders are. And if you penetrate through these side things, you're gonna take out 2 soldiers at once. Or if the explosion effect is good, you might even hit the shells and explode the whole thing. Though, once again, quite hard if you have to penetrate 225 millimeters. And shooting at the hull is even worse, because here you have a bunch of... Well, you have effective thickness of 158 millimeters due to the slopeness. So yeah, also very hard to penetrate. The only way to penetrate it effectively is here in the front. You won't explode the whole tank, but you will take out the transmission at least and a bunch of tankers. Though, here's the thing. If someone penetrates your hull, the motor block actually protects you, because there are no shells in the front or in the center, so you're perfectly protected. Yeah, you basically will never get penetrated through the transmission and through the motor engine into the shells. So yeah, the overall design of this thing is ridiculous. Absolutely strong tank, overall the strongest tank in the game. Yes, so if you want to play a second tank, this is where you have to start. This is where you start to suffer. Secondary tank would be the Shinu. And nope, the Shiha shotgun is a complete trap. This 120mm gun actually has the reload penalty. And you only have a few shells, and you only get high explosives. And it's much worse than the Hori production. And it has no armor. And it's in practical terms, just straight up worse than the Shinu, even though the Shinu has a weaker gun. So yeah, the Japanese only have one tank that's playable, everything else is just bad for high BR. But yep, enjoy this thing, it's absolutely great. And lastly, we take a look at the pride of the Japanese army, the Air Force. Though, ironically enough, in Enlisted, it's not even remotely as strong reflected as in real life, because out of all the planes you can choose from, almost all of them start on a carrier, which is already horrible because it means that you're losing roughly 20 seconds. Roughly 20 seconds is already very bad if you keep in mind that you might get shot down and only get one actual attack in. And even if you do this one attack, just using an infantry squad would have been much better. Or using a tank would have been much better. Throwing a bunch of grenades would have been much better. Or building some structure and start shooting would have been much better. So the planes for the Japanese are in a very bad state. If you want to learn how to fly in Enlisted, they are very good because their turn rates and their great handling makes them very easy to use. But yeah, not that effective to use. So what plane can you actually play on high BI if you want to have a strong army? There are two options. First of all, the second best, the Otsukai. It's a fighter plane, at least designated as one. It comes with 2 medium bombs, 2 autocannons and 2 heavy machine guns, a good speed, a good turning rate, at least relative to the American ones, and an okay climb rate. And most importantly, it doesn't start on the carrier, it starts in the air. So this is quite good. Though, keep in mind, if you're up against Jumbos or Pershings, which are the only tanks that are worth using now as an American player, the 100 kilogram bombs might be not enough. And the strafing from the top also isn't enough too often against these tanks. So this actually starts lacking. It's great on, it would be great on mid BR obviously, but on high BR it's already not that reliable. But you also get the Kiko, Ki 84 Ko, I just call it Kiko, much faster to pronounce. Also the plane is ridiculously fast, so we need to talk quickly about it to honor it properly, because this is just a straight up improved Otsukai in every way. First of all, it's significantly faster. The normal version comes with 711 km per hour. The upgraded version, ironically enough, gets a bit slower with only 695 km per hour, though still it reaches the threshold roughly of 700 km per hour, meaning no plane can really escape you. If you want, you can catch up to every plane. Also, the flying characteristics are insane. You have one of the best turn rates in the game of 14.5, meaning you can easily turn your plane left, right and so on. And you have one of the possibly the best climb rate in the game, 27 meters per second. This means, combined with the speed and with the turn rate, that there's basically no maneuver that you can't do. You can do all flying maneuvers you want. You can actually escape enemy planes no matter how good the pilot is, since his aim won't be as good as your maneuvering will be. And you can do energy retention things. You can just climb high quickly, then start dropping. You can do everything you want. You can outturn your enemy to get behind him. Everything is possible. And most importantly, since you have 2 heavy bombs, which is insanely good, like this is one of the best fighter planes in the game, because the flying characteristics are insane. You have more than enough ammunition to kill multiple planes, to kill a whole bomber raid, and then still have enough to kill 2 more planes, or just strafe the ground with your cannons and heavy machine guns effectively. Or you also get the 2 heavy bombs in addition, so you can actually kill every American tank, and it's very important, because if you happen to not have a whole reproduction tank on the battlefield, you still need something to blow up the Jumbos and the Pershings, and this is exactly what will easily deal with either of them. So yeah, this plane is insane, absolutely insane, a joy to use, very strong, very fun to fly, and also starts in the air. Doesn't start on the carrier, absolutely crucial, absolutely crucial. So how do we want to build our army now with all of the information we get at? Well, for everyone who's free to play and who has exactly 1 vehicle slot and 3 normal infantry slots, it's the safest way to go with a Hori tank, because if you pick a fighter, well, if you pick a plane, there's not really much when it comes to attacker planes. You can, if you want, play the D4Y1, though starting on a carrier is already bad enough, and having only weak machine guns against the American planes is just, well, A, you won't shoot the American planes down, and B, they will shoot you instantly down. So, and the one heavy bomb doesn't really pay off. So the Japanese don't have any good attacker planes, and these 3 fighter planes, at least one of them should have been designated as an attacker plane. By the way, for those who wonder why I didn't talk about this one, well, it's also a fighter plane, also BR5 as the Kiko, but it's just ridiculously bad. Yep, it's easier to kill planes with it, but yeah, I'd rather have the Kiko that kills everything on the battlefield. So if you want to play planes, there's basically only either the Kiko or the Otsukai for the time that you haven't unlocked the Kiko yet. And these are both fighters. And every high BR Japanese player knows that, so all of them are using fighters. You're gonna have a high competition for the one fighter slot. So only having one vehicle just means that if you take a fighter plane, most of the time you can't use it. But since there are 2 tank slots in the game, and since the Americans are constantly HRing your ground forces, your teammates will lose their tanks on a regular basis, and this is exactly where you can spawn your Hori and just get revenge on those Americans in the name of the Emperor. So one Hori production tank is basically an auto-include. Regarding the infantry slots, I strongly recommend one APC, which I do for all nations on all BRs. In the Pacific maps it's especially good, one might argue, because the map design is very non-linear. This means that getting time advantage over your enemy while getting to an objective is extremely beneficial. Extremely beneficial, and APC is the fastest way to do that. By far the fastest way to do it. Also the easiest way to get flanking maneuvers. Also the easiest way to, if you're bored, if you're too lazy to play well, if you're too lazy to build rally points, guess what? APCs literally help you out with that. Since I started having armies with 2 APCs, I also started building rally points much less often. Instead, I just always have an APC up, which saves up time and allows you to be lazy while you're playing and still be the perfect performing team player that you are. Obviously, since the Emperor watches you and wants you to be a good soldier, so you become one of the Emperor's chosen. Then, well, what about the remaining 2 infantry squads? If you want to power play, you just take a rifleman squad with, well, with type A automatics. Now, if you want to be very lazy, take one rifleman squad with type A's and one with grenade launchers, and everything's gonna be easy. This, by the way, is the only nation where I didn't specifically recommend the grenade launchers. For 2 reasons. First of all, the American tanks are usually too strong to be affected by them, so they're quite useless on high BR. And B, the type A is so ridiculously overpowered, you actually want to have the type A over the grenade launcher. But if you want to just play maximum power level, maximum power gaming, having 2 rifleman squads with these 2 overpowered weapon types is the easiest way. If you want to have a split, make sure you play the machine guns, not only because they're super fun, but also because they're really strong. Over the SMGs. The SMGs are just way weaker than the machine guns. And you can still put the SMGs, as already explained, on all the special soldier types like the APC drivers and so on. If you like flamethrowers, yep, the flamethrower squad is very much worth it. Though the maps usually are long range confrontation maps or long distance engagement maps, so having access to machine guns and assault rifles is much better than having access to range limited flamethrowers. And if you do have additional squad slots, I strongly recommend to use the first one for the fighter plane, because the power is just obviously there. And this also gives you the ability to shoot down the American P-47s that will constantly harass you, meaning your life's gonna be much easier on the ground. Because you can't always rely on your pilots to be actually useful. This way you will actually become useful. And for those who think, wait, why can't I just build anti-air guns with my engineer squad? Well, anti-air guns are great on low BR tolerable on mid BR, but on high BR they're just way too weak against the planes. Way too weak. And especially against fast planes. Especially against partially armored planes. And the American high BR planes are all of that. So yeah, they won't really work that well. But what will work is having access to the best fighter plane in the game. So yes, so one additional slot goes straight to the Kiko, and then just fill in with whatever you want. You can fill in some fancy cool looking squads like this one. That gives you the maximum style points and makes you instantly an Emperor's Chosen. Or just use the most fun squad for the Japanese there, the anti-tank gunner squad with triple version of the anti-tank rifle. One absolutely unique feature about the Japanese army is also that they're the only one who have regular access to swords. This means under the weaponry section and equipment delivery, you can, for a very low price, much cheaper than before the merge, get your hands on the Shinguntos. Now these swords, especially after they became easily available for everyone, completely changed the way how your army works in terms of being mobile, because using these, especially together with flasks, means you can constantly charge across the whole map. You don't have to walk, you can always charge. And this is extremely strong if you're on the offensive. This is extremely strong if the enemies are on a very effective offensive and you need to quickly get to the point and defend it. And it's also in general strong if you just want to slice a bunch of enemies. Also very fun to use. So I recommend to, as a no-brainer for the Japanese obviously, to get every one of your soldiers a sword. Also a flask, because charging will drain your stamina quickly, especially if you have a bunch of weight equipped. For example, the machine gunners with the double machine gun version. Giving them a sword completely negates all of the mobility issues, and the flask also. For those thinking now, wait, don't most of the Japanese weapons have bayonets? So why do I need katanas? Well, that's true. Surprisingly many weapons have bayonets. If you look at the SMG line, roughly half of them have bayonets. Yeah, this one has a bayonet. This one has a bayonet. This one has, of course, a bayonet. And it goes on like that. Even some even some light machine guns that you carry around have bayonets. Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. But charging with a weapon drains stamina much faster than charging with a sword. So here's, if you want, since this is high BR, and playing high BR goes under the assumption that you want an army as perfect as possible, and you have access to the little bit spare silver, meaning you can just equip your weapons and also get your katanas on top. The way you want to use them is the following way. If you expect enemies close to you, or if you expect you to be in an area where enemies can shoot at you and you would want to shoot back, then just charge with the bayonet. But if you feel, okay, you have the luxuriously safe position that you don't need to instantly start shooting back when something bad happens, just use your katana for fast travel. Let me know what you think about the Japanese army and how you like to play it, and what your secret insights are, and how you became an Emperor's Chosen. And until next time, goodbye.